Good afternoon, everyone, and I am Denise White, Colorado Municipal League's Communications and Engagement Manager, and I'm happy to welcome you to our webinar today, where we are going to get a preview of the 2024 legislative session. It's already started, so a preview on the front end, but some of the stuff has already happened. With us today, joining us is CML's advocacy team. Before I turn it over to Heather Stauffer, their manager there and lead advocate for the team, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. As always, we are recording this session and we will make it available post the session. It should probably be online at cml.org under our training material section, probably beginning of next week. Additionally, if you're an elected official in attendance, you will receive 1 university credit for attending today. Thank you for pursuing your continuing education and effective governance. All of our participants, including those in the room that you see today, are on mute for the most part, but we do encourage you to ask questions through the question panel. You should see that up in the upper right part of your screen. There'll be a little question box. You can throw a question or chat in there. We are going to do the presentation and then we'll have a general Q&A session at the end. And at that point in time, I will help moderate for bringing your questions forward to our panel of advocates. Also in the back wings is CML's general counsel and attorney. So they are here in the back if we need to pull on them to answer some of these specific questions that they can help with as well. We are holding all questions to the end, so please pop them in the box, but we won't answer them in real time on this one. One more thing I'd just like to mention is that we are experiencing a network outage in the Denver area. So we are working through this. Our advocates are amazing, like they're out there in the Capitol every day working for you, and they are pushing through to get this information for you today through some technical difficulties. But we are hoping we work those out, but please have some patience if there's a little bit of feedback every now and then. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Heather, and you can introduce your team and dive right into the meat of the material.
Hi, everyone. I apologize. We are having some network problems over here, so I am on the screen twice right now. One of them is frozen. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. As Denise mentioned, my name is Heather Stauffer. I'm the advocacy manager here. I am joined today by my colleagues Elizabeth Haskell, Beth Staples, and Jeremy Shubach. And we are really excited to talk to you today about what's happening in the 2024 legislature. As you know, it started on January 10th. Last week. I don't know if I can mute it. Can you just mute it?
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So the legislature started last week, January 10th.
Since that time, the legislature has introduced a number of bills that we have been looking at and considering. We obviously this year, a lot of emphasis will be placed on housing and land use, as we saw last year. So we do expect a number of bills in that arena, which Bev will go over. We also expect a number of bills affecting tax policy, which Elizabeth will cover. And then we'll have our more perennial issues that we see every year, such as criminal justice, which Jeremy will talk about, water issues, which I will talk about, a number of accessibility related bills that I will also cover. So we will just dive right in. And I believe Jeremy is the first one, so I'm going to shoot his computer right back to him.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Shubach, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm going to kick off right away with an upcoming issue for us, one we've been watching closely since late fall as this became an issue. It's pre-legislation at the moment. We've seen drafts, but we expected to drop shortly and wanted to make you aware of it. And that is a recent change in rule by CDOT. They have maintained a position that they need to charge right-of-way fees for broadband access per mile on an initial and ongoing basis. Right now, there will be an initial fee for installing broadband in a CDOT right-of-way, and then an annual charge for users at the end. Currently, the rules as proposed and passed by CDOT have 3 cents per rural mile and 10 cents per urban mile as the standard in rural. The legislation that we are working on with partners and stakeholders at the Capitol pushes back on the right of CDOT to charge a fee for broadband. In other words, their rules and current position is that they can charge these fees. This proposed bill would say we cannot do that, and there should be no charge in Colorado. There's some negotiation a little bit right now on the status of the language for that. That's why we don't exactly have a draft. There may be a version of the bill that says must charge the least amount of fees in a 50-state survey, in which case that would be 0, or that it can charge no fees. So we're anticipating taking action on this bill when it comes up. We are very, very skeptical of CDOT's right to do this, especially in the light of the governor's push to increase broadband access statewide. And so this is our current hot topic in the area of broadband. And with that, I'll turn it over to next topic, which is housing. Bev?
Thank you, Jeremy. So there's obviously a handful of bills in housing that we're keeping an eye on. The first is actually CML initiated legislation. We are working with Senators Kirkmeyer, Zenzinger, and Representative Byrd on our own housing legislation. That's that first bullet point there, the state support for sustainable, affordable housing. So this bill essentially will require local governments to produce their own housing needs assessments. Basically, there will also be an option for regional planning rather than doing individual housing needs assessment. A group of local governments could choose to participate in a regional housing needs assessment instead. And then there's going to be some requirements from DOLA to report and to create guidance for what those housing needs assessments should look like. There's also going to be some requirements on master planning, and we have 15 million allocated for technical assistance. We are also working with Senator Roberts because he has been working on something very similar in the strategic growth space. So we've been working with him and we're very hopeful that we can collaborate and combine our bills rather than run two separate but substantially similar pieces of legislation. And then the next couple bullet points here are all kind of coming from what 213 was last year, although they are different. The first is transit-oriented communities. So essentially requiring rezoning for higher density housing developments within a certain radius of frequent transit. So we've been part of a lot of stakeholding and providing feedback, and we have some concerns about some aspects of the bill and some requirements. I do want to note that at this point, this phase of the draft, non-compliant jurisdictions will have their HUTF funds revoked. We obviously have some major problems with that, so we have been, like I said, offering our feedback on that in particular, but on the bill in a broader sense. And similarly, there's an accessory dwelling units bill. This one's a little more straightforward than TOCs. This one requires local governments to allow ADUs as a use by right in their jurisdictions. I should mention for TOCs and ADUs, there's some parameters around which jurisdictions are actually going to fall into the required category. It's typically those within MPOs with certain population sizes and median, average median incomes. And then we have a bill that we're expecting, or actually has already been introduced on occupancy limits. This one's from Rep. Rittenell, and it is also very straightforward in terms of it's pretty bare bones, prohibiting any occupancy limits that are not tied to square footage that's necessary for health, safety, and welfare. So we have some concerns on that one too, and think that there needs to be some more accommodations. So we have some amendments that we'll be seeking on that one. And then the final piece on housing that we are aware of is parking minimums. We actually do not have a draft of this one yet, so hard to get into too many specifics, but from what we're aware of, it will be a ban on parking minimums for at least some municipalities. It could be municipalities within MPOs, or it could be tied to that TOC bill I mentioned previously, where parking minimums would be banned along transit corridors. So we don't know the exact scope, but that's the general idea. And that's all I have for housing.
All right, the next provision of the next legislation I want to talk about is meetings and records. So we just got a draft of this late last week, public meeting accessibility requirements for public bodies. This bill is very, very broadly written. It's very much in the vein of the digital accessibility bill that we saw in House Bill in 2021. In the sense that is very broadly written. There are no accommodations language. There's no the brought over from the federal ADA statutes. So essentially this bill would require all public bodies in a meeting where you're discussing public business and voting to live stream their meetings online. This could be a Zoom platform. This could be, I believe it could be an audio recording as well. Not recording, excuse me, a live audio, live audio as well. It also requires that you post documents for the meeting 7 days in advance of the meeting. It's inconsistent with open meetings law, current open meetings law, which requires 24 hours in advance. And indeed, some clerks have let us know that if you post it 7 days in advance, it's likely that some of the documentation will not accurately reflect what's going to happen in the meeting because things change. The other provision of the bill that we're particularly concerned about is around auxiliary services. So think sign language translators, hearing aids, things like that. We're required under the federal ADA currently to provide those to folks who request it. This bill creates a scenario in which you can request an auxiliary service within 7 days if it's digital, questionable if that's in person. It does not speak to that. And if the local government, but you do not have to say why you need it. And then if the local government can't provide that to you, you have to delay your meeting. So that has broad implications for any number of public bodies, including the legislature, which we've pointed out to them. And it's also just ripe for abuse, not by folks in the disabled community, I would just note, but by others who may find this as a convenient loophole to delay public business. All of this, if you can't comply with the requirements of the bill, you can be subject to a discrimination claim. So we had a brief conversation with the advocates who wrote the bill. They do seem willing to talk with us. We sent them about 4 pages of detailed feedback on all the ways that this was would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to implement. So we're hoping to have more conversations around that, but that is something that we're watching. It has not, may have been introduced today. I haven't checked, but it will be introduced soon. Thanks.
I think I'm next. Next on the list of bills we want to bring to your attention is the Fix to Senate Bill 23075. And this was introduced last night as House Bill 24-1090-1090. And the intent of this language is last year's Senate Bill 75, limited access, cut off access to court filings with sensitive references to juveniles. And minors. The court in doing this, in executing and implementing Senate Bill 75, cut off criminal court filings for a number of attorneys, including municipal attorneys who represent cities in terms of like extremist protection orders when representing the law enforcement agency or responding to a subpoena, and they need access to these files. The Justice Department introduced Senate Bill or House Bill 1090 last night as a proposed fix to this filing access error, and we believe it does not go far enough. And so we are working with partners to amend in specific reference to municipal attorneys so that they can have access to these criminal records in the form that they need in a timely fashion, which allows them to respond to courts, subpoenas, to dangers to the communities with extreme risk protection orders. And we have proposed legislation, and we'll be meeting with members of the judicial branch later on this afternoon, and we'll be able to report back to you. But this is a hot topic for us in terms of municipal court actions. So with that, I will turn it over to the next slide and the next topic here. Oh, which is also me. Yay. So we are taking a position on a forthcoming bill on no-kill animal shelters. In short, this bill would require all animal shelters in the state to post notice when they are about to or want to euthanize an animal, to give it to any other shelter in the state who's willing to take it. They have to post it for 3 days. If you're a baseball fan, think this is the waiver wire. And that if another shelter in the state is willing to take that animal, they cannot euthanize it. They must hold it for up to 2 days to allow for that shelter anywhere in the state to come and pick up that animal. This creates public safety issues because we're housing dangerous animals. It violates our local control in terms of this law would supersede any local dangerous pet ordinance or any other animal municipal ordinance that's in place, and creates danger to the public, to animal shelter workers, and really does not do much to keep animals much safer, keep workers much safer, keep communities safer. And so because of those reasons, we are opposing this bill unless it's amended to recognize changes for municipal code or to allow for local control in issues of pet or dangerous species ordinances that currently exist. And that is that bill. It has not yet been introduced, but that is our position. And to Bev for public health.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, so there's two pieces of legislation in public health that we are. Sorry. There's two pieces of legislation in public health that we are focused on. One is overdose prevention centers. Essentially, this bill did not make it out of the interim committee this past fall, and it got introduced anyway by Representative Epps without some of the safeguards that we had wanted to see in the previous version. We have taken a neutral stance on this. We understand it's a very sensitive issue, and we are really concerned about some of the lack of safeguards around minimum standards that CDPHE should really be issuing, the potential for a pilot program that would have a sunset date rather than just an indefinite allowance of these types of centers. And then the second piece is substance abuse disorder harm reduction, and this creates immunity, civil and criminal, for a variety of public individuals to use opiate antagonists. And it also allows individuals to not be criminalized for possession of needles that are from a needle or a syringe exchange. We are supportive of this with some amendments. We want to make sure to clarify that those needles are clearly labeled as being from exchange so that law enforcement has an easy time enforcing that protection. And that's all I have in public health.
Can I ask you to just re-speak again, maybe quickly on that overdose prevention center? We were getting a bit of echo feedback on that, so I'm not ever sure everybody got that clearly.
Sure. Hopefully you can all hear me. Sorry for all of our technical issues today. We're doing our best. Overdose prevention centers, this was something that has come up a couple of different times. It was something that we had supported last session. And then there was an iteration of this bill in an interim committee this past fall. And that bill did not move forward out of the interim committee, but it did get introduced by one of the members of the interim committee anyways. But the version that's been introduced by Representative Epps is lacking some basic safeguards that we feel are really important to have because we understand it's such a sensitive issue. So we have a neutral position on that bill. I hope that that clarified. Policy committee, I should say. Yes, I should clarify. Policy committee recommended a neutral position.
Perfect, thank you.
So the next bill in regulated substances is a proposed legislation, Senate Bill 22, which regulates flavored tobacco products. And we're taking a look at this bill. Municipalities, as many of you know, have long had the ability to regulate tobacco products within their jurisdictions. This bill proposes to give counties the ability to regulate the distribution and transportation. We're watching this bill, have yet to recommend to the policy committee a position on this bill or to have the board vote on a position. However, we're concerned about the limitations of distribution within a municipality if the county, if tobacco is banned by a county, there's some question as to whether or not municipalities can still have distribution and transportation go back and forth. We're clarifying those issues and working to get clarity into that issue at this particular moment. It's something that we are working with the regulators on, working with the state on, and having discussions with stakeholders. So, and that leads us to special districts and content of material libraries. So next is a discussion on a process and committee for banning material in libraries. Currently, the bill addresses both school libraries and municipal and public libraries. There is some degree of discussion at the stakeholder level about whether or not the bill is going to be limited to school libraries only. That amendment has not yet been proposed, and we have not seen it in action. The bill provides for the state board to create a district, a oversight panel that would monitor whether or not school districts can ban content, media content in libraries. And in the opinion of school districts, in a fair reading of the bill, creates an opportunity for the state to step in and supersede local control, certainly at the school district level, on the material housed in school libraries, public libraries, and municipal libraries. We also have some concerns with the bill and are working to clarify provisions in the bill that talk about the discrimination against patrons or employees of a library rather, in the bill. And there is a general sense that the bill, while well-intentioned, is overbroad in certain places and can leave municipalities exposed to liability when a book is proposed to be banned, or someone complains, or a library employee does not follow established library or municipal policies, and whether or not the state can then override those. And so we're working with CEA, the proponents of the bill, to get clarity, and then we will be making a recommendation on the bill to our policy committee and then to the board. And that leads to sustainability.
So there's two major bills that we're aware of in the sustainability space. We actually do not have draft language on either of these, but we're in conversations with the sponsors for both and have concerns on both. So the first is Rep. Rutenell is working with CDPHE on an environmental justice bill. And his intention is to allow municipalities to have local control over permitting for certain projects in their community that they would view as polluters. And once the state has approved those projects, the bill would give municipalities the opportunity to also approve the projects. So it's something that we're very interested in and just want to see exactly what the implementation would look like. And then the other bill is from the Colorado Energy Office, and they want to have statewide standards for energy permitting, renewable energy permitting and siting. Their feeling is that municipalities sometimes implement unreasonable, in their opinion, setbacks or other restrictions on permitting these projects. We have not heard from them that there's any sorry. We just haven't heard that there's really any evidence that this is an issue. So we're in conversations with CEO and raising our concerns about it because we do want locals to be able to impose reasonable setbacks and restrictions that they feel are necessary. So those are my two in sustainability.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Haskell. and I'm going to talk to y'all about taxes. We've got several bills that we're monitoring right now related to property tax and sales and use tax. In the property tax space, we have Senate Bill 2, which is a bill that's being proposed out of CCI, and it was brought to CCI from Summit County. And this bill is creating the ability for counties and municipalities to establish property tax rebate or credit programs. What the bill's goal is to incentivize programs that will create improvements of in areas of specific local concern. And areas of local concern, specific local concern, are defined in the bill as the use of real property in a county or municipality that is determined by a local government's governing board to be diminished or unavailable based on verifiable data, and which use the governing board finds and declares necessary for the preservation of health, safety, and welfare. So I think that what the bill is aiming to do is incentivize the use of properties to help with housing concerns in communities, as well as perhaps daycare concerns. So CML, we are CML, is taking a support if amended position on this. The board voted, or the policy committee voted on this today to support if amended, and we're looking at amending the bill so that municipalities have a stronger say in what counties incentivize. And the reason this is important to municipalities is because if a county incentivizes a property use that doesn't really line up with municipalities' needs, it could be problematic for a municipality, since the property tax incentive, the county property tax incentive would include properties located in the entire county, not just in the unincorporated areas. So we'd like to have a little more say when there'll be incentives within a municipality. The other bill that we're following is Senate Bill 33. And this bill is a bill about short-term rental property tax treatment. This bill is coming also from Senator Hansen, I'm sorry. This is Senator Hansen. And you probably have heard about this particular bill. It came out of the Interim Tax Policy Interim Committee. And the version of the bill right now states that any short-term rental property that is rented more than 90 days will not be considered a residential property for property tax purposes. However, I don't think it's going to stay that way. There's lots of talk about this bill. I've heard that it won't make it out of the first committee. I've also heard Senator Hansen say he's working on a variety of different tax treatments for properties that maybe some will remain residential. There'll be different lengths of time that a property can be rented, and then perhaps the property tax treatment would be tiered depending on how many days a year the property is rented. The policy committee on that bill decided to monitor, because it seems like our membership has a lot of different opinions on the bill, and so we're just waiting to see how it moves along, and if it moves along, and what happens to it during the amendments. So those are the property tax. The other ones are sales and use tax bills. These came out of the sales and use tax simplification task force. These are all dealing with, well, you would think sales tax, but some of them are dealing with lodging tax. So we have some issues with that in some of the bills. One bill that we're concerned about particularly is House Bill 1041. And this bill is requiring that all municipalities, all home rule municipalities, be on the SUT system. And that's problematic because we think that it's an overreach of the home rule authority, taxing authority. And what the bill says is that all municipalities will be on SUTs, and then if you're not on SUTs, then it establishes specific filing thresholds for the taxpayers, and saying that the home rules, if you're not on SUTs, cannot collect money, or you have to collect it in these varying thresholds. So we are opposed to that bill, working on just making it go away, but we'll see how that works out. Another one of those that is interesting or concerning to us is one that is Senate Bill 24, and that's local lodging tax reporting and sales returns. And in that bill, it's a bill that Expedia has got the interim committee to run, and that bill is saying that when a municipality is asking for tax information from pretty much from Expedia, that they cannot ask for any additional information that they would not ask from any other sort of online intermediary. So it's been brought to our attention that some municipalities might ask for lodging data, they might ask for nightly rates or occupancy for various reasons that they need that information, and Expedia doesn't want to provide it. So they're trying to get a bill to say you can't ask for that anymore. So we're working on opposing that bill as well. And that's about all the time I have. So I'm not sure who's next.
So in transportation, one bill that we are looking at and then we have taken, or our board has taken a support position on is Senate Bill 036. It's a vulnerable road user bill that essentially requires larger vehicles to pay a fee that then goes to local governments in order for those local governments to put in more pedestrian safety measures like bike lanes, better sidewalks, crosswalks, things like that. Relatively straightforward, and we think that it would be something that would be helpful for local governments. And then the other bill is an RTD governance bill, and this is aiming to change the makeup of the RTD board from elected to appointed positions, which in general we are supportive of, but we are hoping that the bill will take into consideration or that the board will have input from municipal members rather than being appointed exclusively or largely by the governor. Those are my two on transit.
And there's my mute button. So on the last bill that we'd like to talk to you about today, features utilities. Oh, sorry, my notes in. Local government right-of-way. This is a bill that is currently being drafted. It deals with an issue that was arised out of a situation between Excel and Arapahoe County. And the bill will require, in its current form, municipalities to provide notice to utilities when they're engaging in a construction or right-of-way related transportation project, and enter into an agreement with that with that utility. Currently, only investor-owned utilities are the only ones affected. In order to make that utility move their infrastructure on a timely basis, or potentially, if it's not moved and it holds up the construction project, pay the costs of the fines or any penalties for delay incurred by the municipality or the county, the local government, as a result of the investor-owned utilities delay or failure to comply with that notice. This is understandably a very hot topic at the Capitol, and certain investor-owned utilities are very invested in not seeing this bill go forward. We are currently in discussions with a number of entities to see what we can do in terms of making sure that the policies are right for municipalities and that the language works for our folks. The bill is proposed by Colorado counties and carried on behalf of Arapahoe County, and there is a great deal of interest around this bill. It is, as I said, not yet been introduced, and so we don't have an official position on the bill. We are taking a look at it very carefully and reaching out to municipalities on their experience with investor-owned utilities in right-of-way related projects. Would welcome any comments or feedback, especially by email, on this particular topic, and look forward to bringing you updates on this bill as it goes along. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have two water bills that we're looking at. Senate Bill 5, this is a prohibition on certain landscaping practices. So this bill, after January 1st, 2025, it prohibits a local government from, or an HOA, I should say, from allowing the installation or placement of what they're calling non-functional turf, artificial turf, or invasive plant species on any commercial, institutional, or industrial property. So this would apply to local governments, state governments, and HOAs. So non-functional turf is defined as turf that is solely ornamental and located in areas such as the street, sidewalk, driveway, parking lot, frontage areas, or a median that is not regularly used for civic, community, or recreational purposes. It does not include turf that's used in parks or sports fields or playgrounds. It does allow for the maintenance of turf in non-functional areas if it was installed prior to January 2025. But it prohibits new installation. So I think that's important. Our board recommended an opposed position on this bill back in December. The problem is not necessarily with the policy. A lot of local governments have gone way above and beyond this requirement in their own communities. The issue that we have with this bill is the state overreach into local landscaping codes. You know, there may be a reason that local governments would want an industrial site to have some open green space. And it's best determined at the local level why we're placing specific landscaping where and requiring specific landscaping where. So we are opposing this bill. It is up in committee, I believe next week. So I'll be testifying in an opposed position. I do expect this to pass out of committee, but we will make our opposition known. I have offered to the Water Interim Committee on this bill. I mentioned that, you know, the better way to go about this is to put more money into turf replacement programs that local governments use. There's not enough money in those right now. So I think I'm just going to continue to push that narrative because it's true. And those really get at those water savings that we're all trying to see by removing residential landscaping for those who want to participate. So that's one of them. The second bill we discussed at policy committee today, and that's warrants for metro sewage disposal districts. So currently in Colorado, there's 2 metro sewage disposal districts. One of them is Metro Water Recovery, which is in the metro area. One of them, I believe, is in Fountain. They are required by the EPA to ensure that local businesses are following pre-treatment standards before they're dumping or disposing of water into the sewage systems. So in that, they need to inspect certain facilities. So sometimes they've found that local businesses have denied their request for inspection, and in those cases, they need to get warrants. Because they cover a vast amount of territory, they found that it's been cumbersome to get warrants from every jurisdiction. So this streamlines it to just say that they can go to district court or county court to get a warrant to inspect those properties. This is very similar to water inspectors, other water inspectors in statute. So our policy committee recommended a support position on this bill, and we'll take this to our board next week. And I believe that's the last topic we have. So I will turn it over to you, Denise.
Yep, so as I said, we've had a couple of questions come in, and I've been responding to one while you were speaking there, but you can answer it locally if you want at this point in time. We had a question on who it is that's bringing forward the SB 2449 content of materials in libraries. That was one question we've had come in. I think that was Jeremy. Yep. Oh, I think you're muted.
Senate Bill 49 is being sponsored by Senators Cutter, Kolker, Henriksen, Michelson, Janae, and Priola. In the House, its second chamber, it will be sponsored by Representatives Joseph, Hamrick, Garcia, Kipp, Leader, Titone, and Vigil. So it's quite a lineup of education focused Democrat leadership.
Thank you, Jeremy. We also had a question back on, I believe it's on the meetings question. And there's a question regarding, does meeting bill require ability for remote user to provide audio participation?
Thank you for the question. I pulled up the language here because I'm not 100% sure on the answer of this question, but what I can find in the language as drafted, the meeting requirements in terms of streaming and using video platforms are required for everyone except for people in the state who are in a geographic location that is an unserved area of the state in terms of broadband. So in that context, you can use if you cannot use a video conferencing platform because you don't have internet, you can allow participation via telephone or conference call into a public meeting, but I do not believe that that is allowed for everyone. I think that there's language in here that says that you can use audio to stream the meeting, but if in terms of allowing people to publicly testify, I believe you have to use a video conferencing call. And I'll let Robert correct me if that's incorrect from his reading of the bill. It's a little bit confusing, and I just also point out that just because there's a difference between unserved areas of the state and people who don't have reliable internet. So that's one of the distinctions that we made to the advocates as well, because if you're in an area of the state that has unreliable internet, you're also not going to be able to comply with the provisions of this bill. And does that leave you liable? So one of the questions that we posed, and I don't know if Robert has more thoughts on that.
No, I believe you've described the vagueness of the bill accurately, Heather. It's what is going to be required, and I think that's one of the areas that'll be hashed out, likely not to people's benefit, unfortunately. So I think that's something that we're going to be watchful of to make sure that those standards would remain appropriate for everyone.
Great, we can see if we have any follow-up on that one. Not seeing follow-up to that one, but a quick question here, or maybe not so quick, is are there any preliminary comments on House Bill 24-1026? And a little follow-up on that one is just asking if this is a redo of the prior debrucing voter authorization. So preliminary comments and thoughts on the redo.
Hang on really quick. House Bill 1026. Oh, this is my bill. Local Government Taxpayers Bill of Rights prior to voter approval requirement. So this bill would essentially say that if you prior to 2020 passed debrucing measures or allowed revenue in excess of your Tabor spending limits, that you would actually have to go back to the voters and have a vote on that exact same measure before 2029. This is being carried by one Republican in the House. I don't anticipate that it will get past its first committee. Our policy committee did recommend an opposed position on this bill today, and our board will take this up to next week for an official position. But stranger things have happened. I've definitely seen a bill sponsored by one Republican get through, but given the topic area on this, I would be very, very, very surprised if this one made it past its first committee. That being said, we will likely take an opposed position and lend our opposition to the bill.
Great, thank you. And I invite anyone to continue asking your questions. We've got about 10 minutes here. Jeremy, while I'm waiting to see if other question comes in, we did have interest again in that, I have to go back to that, the 2449, Senate Bill 2449 on the libraries, I think it was, and just looking to see if you might be able to recap it again. There's some questions on maybe and just need some clarification for a couple of audience members on what that bill really means and what we're looking at again on that.
Yeah, certainly. Senate Bill 49, the library bill. I'm just pulling up the text real quick. I apologize for the delay, but I want to make sure that I'm want to walk through the different sections. First, and Robert, feel free to weigh in as well, so that I can cover more than just our concerns. The nature of the bill concerns public libraries and school libraries, and the ability, it requires districts to set up a review panel, a committee that will, when there is a recommendation to ban material, a book or something, or remove it from the shelves to make it inaccessible, a committee would take a formal position on the bill, on the removal. I apologize, I have bills on the brain. Before the committee takes a position, an individual employee or librarian can choose not to remove the material, and is subject to not to penalty for that. There is also no provision for penalty for an employee who would remove or not remove material after that committee has made a decision. These are school committees. There's no provision in the bill for municipal or public libraries to set up a similar committee. In my reading of the bill, Robert, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the bill applies to both municipal and school libraries. That's where it gets a little convoluted. There are anti-discrimination provisions in the bill. You cannot discriminate against an employee who takes an action, or a librarian who takes a position, or anybody who complains or files an appeal on library material that's removed. Again, it's a little bit muddy, and we're working to get a lot more clarity on that. I was able to ask questions of the sponsors last night about what they meant by that discrimination provisions, and where in fact they were kind of linked to, because discrimination is defined differently in a few places of CRS and not in this bill, nor is library defined in this bill specifically, and that's why there's some confusion between school library and municipal library, I think, in some cases. Going more deeply into the bill, we've asked for clarification in some of those provisions from a municipal perspective. A couple of issues have been raised. One, the discrimination employee concerns that I just spoke to. Two, public libraries that would be under this jurisdiction, school libraries that would fall under this jurisdiction of school committees, or ultimately the Colorado Board of Education, which would have ultimate authority over whether or not material is banned, but that in smaller municipalities also function as the public library or have a lend-lease intergovernmental relationship with patrons of the library. And so where that level of, I was going to say censorship, but I'm going to avoid that word very carefully, of where material review and decision making would lie in relationship to both the school and members of the public who can use that school library. I think it's fair to say that this is something of a bill in search of a problem, or in response to problems that have arisen in other states, notably the political wars that are going on in Florida and Texas at the moment over library resources and materials. And the sponsors were not able to point to similar cases in Colorado that they were aware of that would make this a Colorado specific concern.
Chairman,
Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thanks. I think a lot of the things about the committees primarily are for schools. Can you not hear me? Am I okay? Okay, sorry. Okay. A lot of the committee things were for schools, and the standards for other libraries require you to adopt minimum standards. One of these components is requiring a creation of a form that would then be posted on your website detailing how whether somebody's asking to remove a resource, and then some additional information. And then that kind of responds to the case, I think last year, or the year before, where there was an open records dispute over whether such records were releasable. Although under this bill, you wouldn't be able to release the name of the person, or post at least the name of the person making the request. So that's another component here, not just the removal of something, but kind of the publicity of how it's done as well. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Great. And we're wrapping up out of time here, so I just want to leave space for any of our advocates to add any last thoughts if they want to. If not, I just want to remind all our members that we will be sending out a follow-up email here with a recording to this session, as well as the contacts for everyone you see on screen right now, so you know how to reach out to them directly if you've got particular questions about particular bills being presented that may affect your community or all municipalities. They're always here to help you. You can always reach out to me and I'll connect you as well. But any last thoughts over there? I'll toss it to you first, Heather, so we can keep our sound going smooth.
I just want to say thank you, and obviously please reach out to us if you have any specific questions. We're always happy to talk through legislation. Also, make sure you're monitoring that State House report that comes out every week. We'll have up-to-date information on all the bills that we are following and tracking and have taken positions on through there. So thank you so much.
Perfect. And with that, I think we will conclude today's webinar and wish everybody a great day. Thank you all for attending and learning with us. And thank you to our advocates for doing what they do, as well as sharing what they're doing with us as well. Thank you all.